as I've been standing here, you've been making a decision about me. You've been deciding whether I'm trustworthy, whether you should continue to watch, whether I know what I'm talking about. All of those things you've already decided just based on looking at me, not based on what's coming out of my mouth, my credentials, my experience, my background, none of that. And what that's called, it's called implicit bias or unconscious bias. It stems from our unconscious mind. And our unconscious mind makes decisions all day long, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're not even aware of these decisions. And they're major decisions. They're not made with our intellect. They're not made with our knowledge base. They're made by split-second, impulsive sometimes, decisions based on information that we have stored in our subconscious or unconscious mind. So this is Dr. Carmen Smith. And yes, I have a background in mental health. I have a background in spirituality. But before I told you that, you may have made decisions based on the color of my skin or my gender. And it's whatever you've gotten from your family, gotten from school books, gotten from your education, gotten from the neighborhood that you live in, gotten from the nation, and especially gotten from the government, which is in charge of our educational system and many of the propaganda or media messages that we hear about people of color. So I want you to challenge all of those subconscious biases. And I'd like to tell you examples of how they've showed up in my own life. My mother, who was a clinical social worker, wanted to buy a home in this white neighborhood, and this was in the 70s. And so she had the money, she had the credit score, she had everything that she needed to buy this home, except for when she talked to the owner was very good about selling her the home. They talked on the phone. But then when she showed up in person to do a walkthrough of the house, the owner of the house, who was Caucasian, said, no, you can't buy this home. So this owner had made some unconscious biases based on the sound of my mother's voice. So she thought that she was talking to another Caucasian person until she saw her in person and she realized she was African American. And then all of those messages that she had stored in her subconscious mind came rushing in and made a decision that no, she could not rent there and she could not buy a home in that neighborhood. Now, how has it shown up in my life? Recently, and I would say in the past 5 years, when I was working for a family agency here in Las Vegas, dealing with abuse and neglect and in foster care, where children were placed in foster care, there are decisions that are made daily by Child Protective Services workers that have to do with removing kids from their homes or placing them back in their homes. And so there was a study done that said that more families of color and children of color were being removed from their families based on the same information that a white family would have, and they would remain with the family and services would be wrapped around them. This is implicit bias, unconscious bias, where the workers probably had set ideas about black families, about black people, about Latino people. And if they had less value or were less trustworthy, then they would remove the kids so that they wouldn't have to be concerned about any type of wraparound services that the family may or may not participate in. So you can see how implicit bias affects all kinds of areas in foster care, policing, and jobs, getting good jobs in the tech company, getting a startup if you're a black or brown person trying to get net capital to try and start your business. And so one particular incident, I was working with a family, happened to be a Muslim family from the Middle East. They were here living in Las Vegas, and they had gotten into the system, and one of their children was in the system, not due to abuse and neglect, but because of a situation that had happened that did not meet that criteria specifically. And so the worker called me on the phone to say that, you know, I really don't trust this family. I want you to talk to this family, and I'm not sure which way we're going to go with it, but I really don't trust them. So when I got to the scene, I talked to the family, and the family was saying, we're going to handle this in our traditional way. And I said, well, that is totally within your right. So then I had a meeting with the caseworker. I had never met that caseworker before. And one of the first things that I asked that Caucasian caseworker was, why didn't you trust that family? Had they lied to you in the past? That worker removed herself or left that meeting immediately and called her supervisor, because her subconscious information that she had been having access to was telling her that black and brown people are not trustworthy. Now she's sitting in front of a psychology person in the psychology department, and she's black and brown. So she had to go above my head to see if, to sift out the facts, I guess. What eventually happened was that child was reunited with that Muslim family, and that Muslim family left the system with a good impression based on my intervention. It is so important to be aware of our unconscious bias. Not only be aware of it, but question it. I had another experience where my supervisor had questioned a Caucasian coworker about her impressions or something that had happened, but did not come to me to get my side of the story. And so she was making her decisions based on that other Caucasian coworker, whom she felt more aligned with, probably due to race and similar experiences. And so I understand how unconscious bias shows up in the workplace. And my message is, be aware of it. We all have it. And this is a brain function. In this video, I would like to share with you some expert opinions on how unconscious bias shows up in our everyday life.
Something in your head navigates you through the everyday adventures of modern life. Something that decides things for you before you can think about it. Because your brain is always on automatic.
We're driven by our unconscious mind. Isn't that the interesting thing? So much of what we do is unconscious. The decisions we make are almost dictated to us. I often wonder who's in charge here. You know, who's running the show? How much control do we really have?
Unconscious influences are there everywhere. And as research progresses, it's never going the other way. It's not saying, oh, we used to think these things were all unconscious, now we find out they're conscious. It's exactly the opposite. All these things we thought, because we thought everything was conscious. Smaller, 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 smaller. It's become the incredible shrinking little man in the head.
There's all sorts of gaps in our perception and outright confabulations that our brains are making for us in order for us to exist, because it's easier to do that than actually to try and make an accurate representation of the world. It's faster and easier for us to estimate what the world's going to look like because it usually works just fine.
However, some people are out to fool us on purpose. People like Apollo Robbins, a magician, and the gentleman thief of the desert town Las Vegas. Apollo not only deceives our eyes, but more importantly, our brains. On a good day, Apollo even steals the show from the city of illusions itself, his adopted home, Las Vegas. Apollo shot to fame in the Caesars Palace Casino. Once he even snatched wallets and watches from Secret Service agents guarding former President Jimmy Carter. Ever since then, Apollo also consults security experts. Magicians like Apollo Robbins take advantage of our automatic mode that otherwise, like an autopilot, navigates us smoothly through life.
Magic is about what's happening inside the head. It's about how you manipulate the attention. It's about how that can be taken advantage of, how you can take people on this journey. If you watch my hand right now, you see that my hand is very clearly empty. I don't reach up with another hand, yet now I have a coin inside the hand. That means you just made a false assumption about something about my hand.
What you are as a human is a bunch of electrochemical signals going around a bunch of circuits inside your brain. There's no windows in your skull. Okay? The only way you get information in is through your sensory systems, from your memory, or from your cognition, that is, you making it up. Okay? So what these electrochemical signals see about the world are other electrochemical signals coming in from other systems that form this grand simulation of reality around us. So, you know, it's not that the world around you isn't there, it's there, but you've never lived there. Okay? You've never even been there for a visit. The only place you've ever been is inside your mind.
So unconscious bias is something that we're not aware of it, but we're always surrounded by information that goes into our subconscious. We make decisions based on that. And so there are many trainings that police officers do participate in that have to do with anti-bias training. You've probably heard of that before. And some caseworkers and other people in agencies are privy to this information and training. The issue is not the training, but it has to be implemented in every aspect of the work. And that requires supervision and constant retraining, and also seeing how it is implemented individually at the job. That is how anti-bias training needs to be implemented in all areas, including education. I remember when my son was little, and his second grade teacher had asked everyone to write out what they wanted to do and draw a picture. And he drew a picture of this fabulous jet plane because he wants to be a jet pilot. And his second grade teacher looked at it and said, well, you're never going to be a jet pilot ever. And so he told me that story when he got out of school, and I was just horrified. He is a beautiful black boy that was going to an all-Caucasian school. And so I didn't know whether to go up to school. I certainly was. And so I asked him, I said, well, honey, what do you want me to do? And he said, Mom, I don't want you to do anything. I'm going to write her a note and tell her that, yes, I am going to be a jet pilot. And he did that. The teacher apologized, and she kept that note by her desk. And so what was she participating in? She was participating in anti-bias training. She was coming with her experiences and her messages about what a little black boy could do. And my son set her straight. I don't think she would ever forget that lesson. We all need to be aware of what biases we bring to any given situation. The United States is changing, but it has to change on an individual level. Those individuals are in council meetings. Those individuals become mayors, governors. Those individuals become senators and House of Representatives. But don't ever forget the power that you have in your gifts and talents, where you work, and how you can be anti-bias and aware of your unconscious decisions that we make every day based on race, gender, sexuality, all of those things, even down to the clothing that somebody has on. We make these immediately assumptions. And so we need to continue to question. But I also want to let you know that unconscious bias here in the United States does have a function. The function is to get people to hate and to fear on a different population. You can hate on people of color, you can hate on Muslims, you can hate on anything that the United States deems is not American. And that can be an array of things. It can be the flavor of the month, whether it is Chinese people, Pakistani people, the Libyans, Iraqis, Iranians, North Korea. It's whoever they deem is going to be the hate of the second. And as long as I can get you to hate and fear, I can control you. I can say that I'm going to fix everything, and then you put me in power to fix things. And what I'm really doing is it's smoke and mirrors. And I'd like to show you this next video of how if I can distract you with one hand, I can manipulate what I really want to have done with the other hand.
Apollo Robbins and other magicians help scientists understand how our brain perceives the world. At the Barrow Institute in Phoenix, even the slightest eye movements are captured with these eye trackers. This helps researchers understand why tricks with curved movements work better than straight movements. With curves, the eye automatically follows the hand. With straight line movements, it jumps to the end, which helps uncover the trick. Susanna Martinez-Conde and Stephen Macknick have studied dozens of magic tricks. The married research couple says illusions are the rule in our heads, not the exception. Magic Tony from Phoenix is a part-time magician, but also a postgraduate in psychology. That's why he sometimes performs in the lab. Test persons follow his tricks with up to 1,000 eye movements a second, and yet they still don't notice how they're being cheated. Tony purposely diverts their attention. We apparently can't help but follow other people's gazes.
So magicians may use explosions or things like that in order to cause distractions at times, but for the most part they use very specific tools in order to control exactly where someone will be paying attention so that they can do something somewhere else.
I like to think of our mind kind of working like a watchtower. If you want to get by the tower, you have to get by the guard. But the guard, if he's not paying attention to the surveillance systems and the inputs that he has, then he can be suppressed. And I think that's what happened when I'm working. I'm trying to get people not to pay attention to what their eyes are telling them or what their ears are telling them.
So I hope that really demonstrates how people in power know how the brain works and how to manipulate in order to have power and control over a population. And so hating gives you an opportunity to distract you. It gives an opportunity for them to distract you. Meanwhile, there are things going on that sometimes we don't even hear about in our news media. So that is the function of hate. And it's something that people in power will not easily give up. I heard a newscaster once say, It's not what they say, it's what they do. And look at the way my hand movements are going. There's a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of Twitter, there's a lot of all this stuff going on, but pay attention to what they do. And if you look at what this administration currently in 2020 has done since 2016, you'll notice that EPA rules have been rolled back. Nuclear power has increased in this country, and pipelines have decided full reign on the United States, which endangers environment, which most people say is causing global warming. So many land things are happening, but also civil rights things are happening, where voter suppression laws are going into effect, and many other things that you can do your own research and find out what has been going on since 2016 while people are focusing on Twitter responses. So what is the answer? The answer is, in order to take away a weapon or just take away its power, you have to really know what the weapon is. The weapon is hate and fear. So if you want to take away that weapon that the United States and the world has been using for a long, long time, what you have to do is focus on the opposite: love and unity. When the Black Lives Matter movement happened and there were more Caucasian people in the crowd, that was going against the fear and hate weapon. And so if we can always come together to address an issue, Caucasians, Muslims, Chinese, everyone on the same page, that takes away the energy of this weapon, and it is no longer useful. And guess what? That's where the country is going. You can see the cracks in the system where they can no longer divide us with race. We're coming together to fight human rights. And so as long as we are together in this unified love in action movement, we decrease the power and control that governments have over us. So we should always remember that our strength is in our unity. Our strength is in our diversity. Our strength is unifying against the weapon of mass destruction, which is fear and hate. Increase love in you. That's where we start. It's not about people agreeing with you. It's about you seeing the love energy in that other person that you also have within yourself. And that is how we change the world. Love you.